My name is Emily Carter, and for 6 years I believed my mother-in-law, Linda, simply disliked me. I never imagined she was quietly planning to take everything I had worked for. My husband, Michael, always told me not to take her comments seriously. "That's just how Mom is," he'd say whenever she criticized my cooking, my clothes, or even the way I spoke. At first, I tried hard to earn her approval. I bought thoughtful gifts. I invited her to family dinners. I even helped her with medical appointments when she needed transportation. Nothing worked. No matter what I did, Linda looked at me like I didn't belong in her family. Then something strange started happening. Small amounts of money began disappearing from my savings account. At first it wasn't much. $20, $50, sometimes $100. I assumed they were banking errors or forgotten subscriptions. But after several months, nearly $4,000 had vanished. I contacted the bank immediately. The representative reviewed my account. "These transfers were authorized from a linked device," she explained. I froze. A linked device? I only used my phone and laptop. Neither had been compromised. So how was this happening? The bank launched an investigation. While waiting for answers, I carefully reviewed every transaction. That's when I noticed something disturbing. Most unauthorized transfers occurred on days Linda visited our house. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. The idea seemed ridiculous. Why would my mother-in-law steal from me? Yet the pattern was impossible to ignore. I began paying attention. One afternoon Linda came over while Michael was at work. She asked for coffee. While I prepared it, she remained alone in the living room. When I returned, she quickly placed something into her purse. The movement was subtle, almost rehearsed. When she noticed me looking, she smiled. "Everything okay?" she asked. I forced a smile back. But my stomach tightened. That evening I checked my home office. Nothing appeared missing. Still, a feeling told me something wasn't right. The next morning I installed security cameras inside the office. I didn't tell anyone, not even Michael. I simply wanted peace of mind. 3 days later, Linda visited again. I watched the camera footage after she left. What I saw made my blood run cold. Linda entered my office, opened my desk drawer, removed several financial documents, and took photographs of every page with her phone. I sat frozen in front of my computer screen. Why would she need copies of my financial records? The answer arrived 2 weeks later. A certified letter appeared in my mailbox. Someone had submitted paperwork requesting access to investment accounts connected to a family trust. My family trust, a trust created by my late grandfather. A trust that contained nearly $300,000. And according to the paperwork, the request had supposedly come from me. My signature appeared at the bottom. But it wasn't mine. Someone had forged it. My hands shook as I stared at the documents. Then I noticed something else. The witness signature belonged to Linda. At that moment, every missing piece suddenly fit together. The disappearing money, the photographs, the forged paperwork. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. My mother-in-law had been building a plan for months. And she was getting bolder. What Linda didn't know was that my grandfather had taught me one important lesson before he passed away. Always keep copies of everything, because someday, the truth may depend on them. And hidden inside a locked filing cabinet in my office was a collection of documents that could destroy her entire scheme. I just didn't know how. Soon I'd need to use them. I barely slept that night. The forged paperwork sat on my kitchen table while I replayed every interaction I'd had with Linda over the past year. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. This wasn't someone making a careless mistake. This was someone following a plan. And if Linda was willing to forge my signature once, what else was she capable of? The next morning, I called the financial institution that managed my grandfather's trust. I explained the situation and emailed copies of my identification. Within hours, they confirmed my fears. The request had been submitted through a third-party notary service. Someone had attempted to gain access to the trust funds using fraudulent documents. Fortunately, the transaction had been flagged before any money was released. But the representative told me something that made my stomach drop. There were multiple submissions. Multiple. Not one. Not two. 5 separate attempts over the previous 3 months. Someone had been trying again and again to reach my money. And every application contained slight changes, as if the person was learning from each rejection. I knew exactly who that person was. Still, I needed proof that would hold up in court. Not assumptions. Proof. That evening, Michael came home from work. I placed the forged documents in front of him. His face turned pale. "What is this?" he asked. Look at the witness signature. The moment he saw Linda's name, his expression changed. At first he defended her. There has to be some explanation. I expected that. Nobody wants to believe their own mother could commit fraud. So I showed him the security footage. Linda entering my office. Linda opening drawers. Linda photographing confidential records. The room fell silent. Michael watched every second. When the video ended, he stared at the screen without speaking. Finally he whispered, "I don't understand." Neither did I, but understanding wasn't my priority anymore. Protecting myself was. The next week, I met with an attorney. I brought everything: bank records, camera footage, copies of forged forms, screenshots of suspicious transactions. The attorney spent nearly 2 hours reviewing the evidence. When she finished, she looked directly at me. "Keep collecting documentation. Don't confront her yet." Why not? Because people who believe they're winning often make mistakes. That advice turned out to be priceless. 3 days later, Linda made her biggest mistake yet. Michael received a phone call from his aunt, Carol. She sounded upset. Apparently Linda had been telling relatives a shocking story. According to her, I had manipulated Michael into changing his family's inheritance plans. She claimed I was secretly taking money from elderly relatives. She even told people I intended to leave Michael once I received enough money from my grandfather's trust. The lies spread quickly. Family members stopped answering my calls. Several blocked me entirely. For a while, I felt completely alone. Then Aunt Carol did something unexpected. She sent Michael screenshots, dozens of them, messages Linda had shared with relatives. And hidden among those messages was something extraordinary. A photograph. One of my financial statements. The exact document Linda had photographed inside my office. There was no longer any doubt. Linda wasn't just stealing information. She was distributing it, using it to manipulate the entire family. My attorney smiled when she saw the screenshots. Now we're getting somewhere. For the next month, we quietly gathered evidence. Meanwhile, Linda grew increasingly confident. She believed nobody suspected her. She believed her lies were working. Then she crossed a line even I hadn't expected. One Friday afternoon, I received an urgent call from my bank. Someone had attempted to add a new authorized user to one of my investment accounts. The request listed a family representative. The name attached to the request: Linda. I nearly dropped my phone. She wasn't slowing down. She was escalating. And this time, the bank had recorded the phone call. The fraud department agreed to preserve the audio as evidence. When my attorney obtained a copy, we listened carefully. The voice on the recording belonged to Linda. There was no question, no confusion, no misunderstanding. For the first time, we had direct proof. My attorney leaned back in her chair. "Emily, she's digging herself into a very deep hole." But Linda still had no idea what was coming. Because while she was busy trying to steal my money, my attorney was preparing a legal case so strong that one hearing could expose everything. And in less than 2 weeks, Linda would walk into a room believing she was about to win. Instead, she was about to discover that every lie she told had already been documented, organized, and waiting for her. The 2 weeks passed slowly. Every day felt like a countdown. Linda had no idea that an entire case was being built around her actions. She continued acting as if she controlled the narrative. Family members still believed her lies. Some relatives refused to speak to me. Others treated me like a criminal without ever asking for my side of the story. It hurt, but my attorney kept reminding me of something important. Facts don't care about rumors. And we had facts. Lots of them. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. The purpose wasn't criminal prosecution, at least not yet. This hearing would determine whether the fraudulent claims against my trust account had any legitimacy. If Linda succeeded, she could potentially create years of legal complications. If she failed, the evidence against her would become impossible to ignore. The morning of the hearing, Michael drove us to the courthouse. Neither of us spoke much. He was still struggling with the reality that his own mother had become the center of a fraud investigation. When we arrived, Linda was already there. She looked confident, almost cheerful. She smiled when she saw us. The smile sent a chill down my spine. It was the smile of someone who thought they had already won. Beside her sat a lawyer I had never seen before. Apparently, she had spent a considerable amount of money preparing her defense. That only made me more curious. Where had she gotten the money? The hearing began. Linda's attorney spoke first. He argued that Linda had merely been helping manage family financial matters. He claimed there had been misunderstandings, clerical errors, miscommunication. The usual excuses. Then our attorney stood. One by one, she presented the evidence. The security footage, the forged signatures, the suspicious bank activity, the screenshots shared with relatives, the recorded phone call. As each piece appeared on the screen, Linda's confidence began to fade. For the first time, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. Still, she refused to admit anything. Then came the moment nobody expected. A woman entered the courtroom and approached the witness area. I recognized her immediately. She worked for the notary service used to submit the fraudulent paperwork. Apparently, investigators had contacted her after discovering irregularities. Under oath, she testified that Linda had personally visited her office several months earlier. Linda had presented documents bearing my forged signature. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what happened next. The witness produced security footage from the notary office. The video clearly showed Linda signing paperwork while claiming to represent me. The room went silent. Even Linda's attorney looked stunned. But there was more. The witness explained that Linda had offered extra cash to speed up processing. That detail immediately raised serious legal concerns. Suddenly, this wasn't simply a family dispute. It was beginning to resemble deliberate fraud. Linda's face turned white. For the first time all morning, she looked genuinely afraid. The judge called a brief recess. During the break, Michael sat alone in the hallway. I could see tears in his eyes. He wasn't grieving money. He was grieving the image of the mother he thought he knew. When the hearing resumed, the judge reviewed all evidence presented so far. Then he asked Linda a direct question. Did you submit these documents? Linda hesitated. The courtroom waited. Seconds felt like minutes. Finally she answered, no, a dangerous answer, because the next piece of evidence destroyed it instantly. My attorney introduced financial records obtained through discovery. The records showed payments made from Linda's personal account to services involved in processing the fraudulent applications. Dates, amounts, receipts, everything matched perfectly. The judge's expression hardened. Linda's attorney requested another recess. This time, the request was denied. The evidence had become overwhelming. Yet the biggest surprise was still waiting. Near the end of the hearing, Aunt Carol stood up. She had traveled across the country to attend. Nobody had expected her to speak. But she asked permission to provide additional evidence. The judge allowed it. Carol handed over a folder. Inside were printed emails and text messages. Hundreds of them. Messages Linda had sent over several years. Many discussed money. Several discussed me. And a few revealed something truly shocking. Long before Michael and I got married, Linda had learned about my grandfather's trust fund. She had become obsessed with it. Message after message showed her discussing ways the money could eventually benefit her. One text read, once she's officially family, that money should belong to all of us. Another read, she's not smart enough to notice what's happening. Reading those words felt like being punched in the stomach. This hadn't started recently. This wasn't a sudden lapse in judgment. Linda had been planning for years. The judge carefully reviewed the documents. Then he announced that the evidence would be referred for further legal investigation. At that moment, Linda finally realized she wasn't walking out as the victim. She was walking out as the subject of a serious fraud inquiry. As deputies approached to speak with her attorney, Linda turned toward me. Her eyes were filled with anger. Not regret, not shame, anger. And before leaving the courtroom, she whispered something that made my blood run cold. This isn't over. For a moment, I thought she was making an empty threat. I was wrong, because 3 days later, I arrived home and discovered something terrifying. My front door was open, and the locked filing cabinet containing my most important documents was gone.